Hey guys, Haley here, flying and bright and crashing into your backyard. And wow, look at this! I've got a whiteboard now. Wow, it's like a whole new grade of technology. Anyway, so hey guys, I've decided that if I'm ever going to become popular, I'm going to try to start uploading weekly, which will usually be on Tuesdays or Wednesdays. And yeah, so today I've been working on this script for basically all week. That's right, it's scripted. I lied in the beginning of the show when we said we wouldn't script, but we have no choice. It's not entertaining otherwise. So today we are going to be talking about horror games. This video, as you've seen in the title, is going to be 14 tips on how to make a horror game better, or just tips on how to make one. So any of you few, maybe 0.5% of you viewers who are actually making horror games or thinking of making one, here are going to be some tips that are definitely going to help you. They're going to eat up your budget, but they'll definitely help you. I don't play horror games, but I'm pretty knowledgeable in what makes humans afraid because I'm human and I'm afraid a lot. People, for some reason, purposely seek out fear as some kind of rite of passage that makes them stronger, or maybe you just want an adrenaline rush. And where's the best place to go? Video games. Video games are even better at scaring you than movies. In movies, you can look at the character and yell at them and to tell them to do something that they're not doing, like, you don't go in the basement, idiot! But in video games, but in movies, it's not as scary because you have directly no control over what happens. In a video game, every death you know is your fault. You have complete control, so you're even more scared. Today, I'm going to teach you some simple techniques to make your horror game even better. Tip 1. Use first-person perspective. As in any game, using first-person makes you feel more immersed, and it makes you unable to see threats around your character unless you turn your head. You can also add sound effects like heavy breathing and a heartbeat. Another thing you can do in first person is you can change your character's vision. If they get hurt, have their vision flash red. If they pass out, have the screen blink a few times before it tilts sideways and goes black with a loud whack. It just makes it so much easier to manipulate what your player sees, and manipulation is key in a horror game. Step 2. Vulnerability. Leaving your player unarmed for the majority of the beginning of the game keeps them on their guard. When a player is wound up, they're more susceptible to the atmosphere you use to set the tones for your game. This makes the setup even more effective in drawing them in. In the beginning of the game, your player is immediately exposed to how you set up the beginning with all the sounds and the lighting and everything. And if they're unarmed, afraid, and wound up, all of those things you're using are going to affect them that more dramatically. Tip number 3, running out of time. Dread and hopelessness are as big contributors to fear as anxiety itself. Knowing the monsters are coming for you forces you to move quickly and prevents the player from adjusting themselves and becoming comfortable. One game that effectively uses this strategy is 7 Days to Die, forcing you to build a shelter, gather food, prepare yourself, all within 7 days. But, to be honest, this is rather generous for a zombie game. Tip number 4. Minimal music and either dim or washout atmosphere. Using minimal or ambient music helps your player become more immersed, more convinced that what they're playing is real. Music is good and all, but in real life, music doesn't come out of nowhere. So, by using only ambient sounds, it makes it seem more real. For the atmosphere, everyone knows the dark, dingy atmosphere, which is typically cliche, but as overused as it is, it's still very effective. Dark means unknown, which means unsafe, but whitewash atmospheres are even more unnerving. A game where everything is monochromatic or dulled down, washed out and bright, but still devoid of colors, gives a feeling of isolation, which is just as fear-inspiring as uncertainty. In whitewash atmosphere, nothing can hide, but neither can you, and that human instinct of dread and loneliness sets up the disturbingly quite the disturbing setting quite nicely. I'm sorry, I suck at reading my own scripts. One game that effectively uses this strategy is Colot. I really recommend you check out some screenshots for that game if you want to know what I mean by whitewash. Tip number 5, the threat. Make it real. The most basic tip that I've been elaborating on this whole time is make the game realistic. Zombies are scary, yeah, but no one's ever seen them. It doesn't hit home quite the same way. However, a human threat, such as a serial killer, is much better. And remember, the threat doesn't always have to be human to be realistic. A possessed doll works just as well, because we see dolls every day, and just because it's possessed doesn't make it any less realistic. As long as you use something that's real as the threat, it's much scarier. But once you start throwing in aliens and monsters, then your player is going to lose that sense of this is real. Add as many real elements as you can. There are some terrifying, real things that happen in real life. Rape, murder, genocide, horrific scientific experiments, torture, child abuse, mental illness. I could go on forever. Use as many real things in your game as you can. Because remember, the scariest thing about a horror game is knowing that whatever's happening on screen could happen in real life. Tip number 6, avoid cliches. I'm just gonna kind of list these in multiple order, and you'll probably know when I'm done. Number 1, messages written on the walls in blood. It's not that this isn't scary, it's just that it's been so done to death that it's not effective anymore. It's just, it doesn't work. Secondly, linear audio diaries. This is lazy plot editing at its finest, directly telling you what happened before, warning you against the monster, and ultimately sending you on a long hunt to find things you don't want to find. It's okay if you're a paranormal investigator, but when you're a normal person in a situation like this, you don't want to know more, you want to get the heck out. Amnesia. If the character wakes up with amnesia, the player instantly knows something is wrong. The best part of watching someone play your game is in the beginning, when they're so tense, waiting for the normality to end and the horror to begin. If they wake up with amnesia, you throw your players right into the horror, and it's just not effective at all. Sudden change in music. One thing I always appreciated in The Legend of Zelda was that anytime an enemy was close, the music changed, and I always knew what was coming, even when it was from behind. However, in a horror game, this is bad. It totally gives away the imminent threat, and you don't want your players saying shoot when the music changes, you want them saying shoot when the zombies jump out. Lights suddenly go out. This works the same way as the change of music. Any sudden change is an obvious indicator that something bad's about to happen, and you don't want to give away those signs. The faint laughter of children. I'm going to be honest here, this is so cliche. Not only is it cliche, it's just not scary. Even if it's creepy, the voice of a child, whether it's saying, I see dead people, or I killed them all, or come play with me, it's still a child's voice. It's not frightening as you think it is. Children are not useful elements in a horror game because children are generally not evil. So it doesn't feel realistic. It's all about the realism. The I'm right behind you or the false scare. You know, when you look around a corner and you're relieved there's nothing there, and then you turn around and he's right there. Yeah, it's shock value at the time, but it's really not scary. It's just annoying and cliche as hell. Jump scare. Jump scares are good when they come when you die or at the end of a scene. But when they happen in the middle of a level where the zombie jumps out at you, it's a bad idea. One thing I learned about in English class is build-up and climax. Your players are in suspense, waiting for that jump scare, and once it happens, the tension is gone. You want to use jump scares as little as possible to draw out the suspense as much as you can. Number 7, keep dialogue and cutscenes to a minimum. Dialogue boxes do not appear in real life either. Keeping them to a minimum is good. They shouldn't appear when you examine an object, because if your object can't be identified by looking at it, chances are it's not needed, or it just needs to be changed. Also, keep cutscenes to a minimum because everyone knows you can't be harmed during a cutscene. The idea is you never want to give your character a break. So whenever sorry. So never pull them away from your dingy, dark, inescapable game. One game that effectively uses this strategy is Yume Nikki. While not exactly a horror game, there is no dialogue, which gives it an unnerving feel. Tip number 8. Force the player to the threat. Everyone hates it when they play a horror game and they're locked in a house and they see a shadowy figure standing in the kitchen, not moving towards you when they see you, and you're like, I'm staying away from that. But then you realize there's no other way to progress the story but to approach that figure. Doing this adds to the effect of the game, knowing you're the one sending yourself to the slaughter. Tip number 9. Don't kill the player extremely easily. If you have your player dying too often and going through the same events over and over, they become desensitized. Oh, there's a serial killer following me. I gotta run. I'll turn left. Oh no, dead end. And I'm killed. Rebooting the game. Alright, this time I'm gonna go right. Another crossroads. This time I'll go right. I'm dead. Dead again. Oh, look, the same running sequence with the same serial killer chasing me. See, this isn't scary. It's just plain annoying. The point is, you want to keep your players on their toes. If the threat feels repeated, then your players won't be scared anymore. The best tip is never have the monster directly chasing the player, and don't make dying too easy. Tip number 10. Force your players to do immoral things to progress. I once played a game with a combination lock. I later found some glass shards and a note that read, "The code is inside her mind." It sounded all metaphorical, but then I found a dead body and I realized, oh no. Oh no. So I used the shard and dug the code out of her head, which made me feel not only guilty, but also made me despair because it showed me that the game can force me to do what it wants if I want to continue. It has control over you, and it can make you take immoral actions for the sake of continuing. As you can see, I illustrated my lovely experience with equally lovely illustration things. Yeah, this totally looks professional. Tip number 11. Selectively hostile enemies. Just look at this. Just look at this grade A Enderman. Isn't he beautiful? He completely illustrates my point. It's normal that in a horror game, when you see a monster, you should shoot it because it's going to attack you immediately. But the stupid scripts. But have you ever walked through a room full of ghosts, or have you ever walked through a room of ghost spirits of girls in white dresses and never had a single one attack you? You didn't expect that. The thing about horror games is they're too predictable. But what about you incorporate an enemy that only turns hostile if you attack it or get close to it? Then you could add a puzzle where you have to avoid touching them. But try to avoid doing this too often, as using it all over and over will desensitize players. Mentioning that, we move on to our next point. Tip number 12. Be unpredictable. Look at this. This is so cute. This is me. This is me being annoyed. This is all the same. You're going to see more of this in the future when I finally get a tablet so I can animate and stuff, whatever. Anyway, using the same types of puzzles or the same enemies or the same scare tactics over and over again will desensitize your player. So technically all of these tips I'm giving you, unless I say so, shouldn't be overused. If you repeat, people will know what to expect, and they'll feel safer. And that's the last thing you want. Knowledge, for a gamer, is power. And the more you tell your player about the villain, or the game itself, the more confident they feel. It might even be better if your player never sees the villain, if they always stay out of view and strike from a hidden location. This naturally triggers a person's fear of the unknown. It I know it may sound sadistic, but you never want your player to feel safe. Even when they are safe, you want them to feel on edge. You want them to feel like they have no control over their fate. You want them to despair that nothing they do is working, that they're ultimately doomed. But you don't want them to think those things as a gamer. You want them to think those things as a person. A gamer who feels hopeless thinks this game is impossible, I can't win. A person who feels hopeless thinks this is it, I'm going to die. No matter what I do, I can't avoid it. If your player thinks like that, you're doing it right. Tip number 13, the invincible enemy. Anyone who plays Yandere Simulator will totally understand what I'm talking about. Think about it. Horror games aren't as scary as they should be. And you want to know why? The enemies are too easy to kill. A zombie crumbles with a single bullet to the head. A vampire dies with a stake to the heart. It's always the same. And it's not the fact that enemies are too easy to beat, it's the fact that they can be beaten. The fact that you're able to kill enemies gives you a sense of control and confidence, or at least something to cling on to. But the best thing you can do in a horror game is strip the player of all security, make them feel entirely helpless, and that is why at least one enemy that is unbeatable. You should have one enemy that's unbeatable. One that kills you if he catches you. Hold on, someone's calling. As I was saying, having one enemy that kills you if he catches you is the perfect tool. It makes you feel helpless, panicked, because you have no control. One tip, though, is if you're gonna have one unbeatable enemy, make it the only enemy. Having multiple unbeatable enemies in different parts of the game isn't scary, it's annoying. So if you're gonna have an unbeatable enemy, don't have any beatable enemies in the game. Only have one. One game that effectively uses this strategy is AO Oni, having only one enemy that chases you and kills you if they catch you. Of course, it's not actually that scary when you play that game. It's just the creepy music that kind of sets it on edge. And finally, tip number 14, health bars and specs. Health bars are essential to a game, but they ruin the feeling of realness, and putting them in a menu you have to pull up only breaks people from the reality of the game. This is why video games with an unbeatable enemy are the best. You don't need a health bar. No matter what you do, the only thing that can hurt you, the enemy, will kill you immediately. There's no need for a health bar because the only way to avoid dying is to avoid the enemy. This is why I strongly recommend using the unbeatable enemy. Anyway, I really gotta wrap this up. So anyway, guys, here are the ending lessons that you should have learned from this so far. Use first-person perspective, make it feel real, make the player feel hopeless, don't repeat, avoid cliches, avoid dialogue, build suspense, and please cut back on the jump scares. They're just not scary. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, please like, comment, and subscribe to become a Starling today. Don't forget to click the little bell to join the Star Squad. That was a lame name, but it was the first thing I could come up with on the dot. Man, you can see my hand over here. Geez, I'm totally exposed. Hi, I've been here the whole time. You don't see me now. So anyway, just click the bell, okay? Please just click the bell. Save me my pride. And next time, I guess I'll see you guys then. Yeah, next week I think I'm just going to do a little... I don't know what I'm going to do next, actually. Please comment something. But until next time, this is Haley, flying out.